In the tranquil folds of the eastern valleys, where time seemed to flow like the gentle waters of the Ganga, there lay a village named Sundargram. Surrounded by swaying fields of golden wheat and thick groves of tamarind trees, it was a place untouched by the rush of cities. Birds sang songs older than memory, and the villagers moved with the rhythm of the sun and seasons. At the far edge of this peaceful haven, beside a winding river, lived a man named Arun. He was the village potter, a slender figure with sun-darkened skin, silvering hair tied in a loose knot, and eyes that held the calm of twilight. He lived in a humble mud-brick cottage shaded by banyan and neem trees, and his days were marked by the turning of the potter's wheel. Arun was not wealthy. His hands bore the marks of labor, his clothes were simple, and he seldom left the village. Yet, he was known across neighboring lands not for riches or fame, but for his patience. People believed his pots never broke before their time, that they held water cooler, longer, and that even plants grew better in his earthen jars. All because Arun treated his clay as a living thing, never rushed, never forced, only guided. The children of the village often visited his shed, peering with wide eyes as he worked. "Uncle Arun?" one of them chirped. "Why do you keep starting over again?" Arun would smile without looking up. "Because the clay is not ready yet. Nor am I." One dry summer morning, a new figure appeared in the village. Tall, lean, and sharp-featured, he wore city clothes and carried a leather bag slung across his shoulder. His name was Ravi. Once a high-paid software engineer in the city of Mumbai, he had burned out under the pressure of deadlines and digital noise. His spirit was weary, and he sought solace in the simplicity he imagined villages still held. But Sundargram to him was too slow. The way villagers lingered during greetings, the time it took to cook over a wood fire, the long pauses between words, everything grated on him. He rented a room near the temple and tried to fill his days with purpose, but the silence made his thoughts louder. One day, he stumbled upon Arun's pottery shed. "Do you make a living like this?" he asked, genuinely curious, though his tone sounded skeptical. Arun paused the wheel and looked up, not with annoyance, but with interest. "I do." "And how long does it take to make one of these?" Ravi asked, picking up a cooling pot. "Sometimes a day, sometimes weeks," Ravi chuckled. "That's terribly inefficient. In the city, they print cups in minutes with machines." Arun nodded. "But do those cups remember the hands that made them?" Ravi shrugged and left, unconvinced. But something about Arun's quiet confidence stayed with him. The next morning, Ravi returned, uninvited. "I want to try," he said. Arun handed him a lump of clay without a word. What followed was a comedy of collapses. Ravi pushed too hard, spun too fast, forgot to center the clay. Days turned into weeks. Ravi began to return every morning, sometimes grumbling, sometimes quiet, but always curious. He watched Arun closely, how he touched the clay, how he let it collapse, and began again without complaint. Arun never raised his voice, never rushed, and never scolded. "Isn't it frustrating when it breaks?" Ravi asked one day after his 8th failed pot. "It used to be," Arun said, "until I learned that clay teaches you what you need to learn, not what you want to know." Ravi slowly began to change. His hands grew steadier. He learned to breathe with the wheel's rhythm, to feel rather than force. He began to wake with the sunrise and stay late after sundown, not because he had to, but because something in him was calming, healing. He stopped checking his phone. He no longer kept count of the pots he made. One day, after 3 months of effort, Ravi held up a small water jar, perfectly balanced, even in curve and thickness. Arun examined it in silence. Then he smiled. "This one will sing when it dries." That autumn, the rains came early. For days, dark clouds crowded the skies. Thunder cracked the heavens and water pelted the village like a siege. The river that had always whispered now roared. When it overflowed, it took with it the pottery shed, the drying shelves, and Arun's most prized pieces pots made decades ago, fired with stories and love. When the rain stopped, the village was in ruins. People mourned homes, crops, and belongings. Arun stood before the empty patch where his shed once stood. He said nothing. Ravi, who had taken shelter in the temple, returned to find Arun sitting in the mud, barefoot and still. "We can rebuild," Ravi said, kneeling beside him. "Together." The next day, brick by brick, they did. Ravi led the effort, calling upon villagers to help. They built a new kiln, larger and stronger. Children brought clay. Elders donated wood. In time, pots emerged again simple, strong, and shaped by patient hands. Word of their rebuilding spread. A local newspaper wrote about the village of calm potters. Tourists came not just to buy, but to watch, to listen, to breathe. Years passed. Arun grew older, thinner, and quieter still. One morning, beneath the shade of the banyan tree, he closed his eyes and never opened them again. Ravi buried him near the river. Over the grave, he placed a large urn, Arun's last creation. On its base, he inscribed, "Time tempers clay, but patience tempers the soul." And so, the pots of Sundargram continued to hold more than water. They held the wisdom of a man who taught an impatient world that slowing down was not defeat, but peace. The storm had ravaged the soul of Sundargram, but it had also revealed its strength. The villagers, though shaken, began to recover. Ravi worked tirelessly, shoulder to shoulder with those he once dismissed as too slow. He no longer looked to escape the village, but to protect it. The new pottery shed rose from mud and timber like a phoenix. Where Arun had once worked alone, now Ravi trained others. The sound of spinning wheels returned, this time multiplied. Under Ravi's guidance, young hands learned what Arun had once taught, that clay, like life, responded best to patience. And yet, Ravi could not forget the silence of the morning Arun passed. The man who had changed him left without farewell. All that remained were memories and pots. While organizing the new shelves, Ravi discovered an old notebook tucked in a carved box, its pages filled with Arun's delicate script. It was his journal thoughts recorded over decades. One passage read, "Today, a young man watched me work with the impatience of fire. I see myself in him restless once, foolish always. But I remember what my own master taught me, that patience is not passive. It is the decision to act when the time is right." Ravi read every page. He wept for the loss, but smiled at the wisdom. He realized then that Arun had not just passed down skills, but a legacy. Inspired, Ravi began teaching children every evening. He told stories while they shaped clay of how pots carried water across deserts, how patience carved temples from mountains, how the best pots were the ones that took longest to shape. He asked them questions, gave them mistakes to correct, and praised silence as much as speech. When a girl named Lila cried over a collapsed pot, Ravi knelt beside her. "Do you know how many times Arun failed before he made his first great urn?" She shook her head, teary-eyed. 37 times, Ravi said. Each time he learned something the next pot needed. The children began to see patience, not as waiting, but as quiet power. A year after the flood, Ravi was invited to a design conference in Mumbai. They heard of his pottery school, the resilience of Sundargram, and his unusual journey. Back in the city, surrounded by glass towers and digital chatter, Ravi felt out of place. He gave his talk, not about profits or techniques, but about Arun, about the clay, about stillness. Some in the audience were unmoved, but many came to him afterward, teary-eyed, and said they hadn't felt calm in years. A young woman asked, "How do we learn patience in a city that doesn't allow it?" Ravi handed her a small clay pendant. "Start with this. Shape something, even if it's just 10 minutes a day." Back in Sundargram, Ravi organized an annual event, the Festival of Patience. It was unlike any fair. No loudspeakers, no races. Instead, people read aloud from journals, shared stories of slow healing, slow growth, and slow love. There were silent tea ceremonies, guided walks through the fields, and of course pot-making sessions. Visitors from cities stayed for weeks afterward, changed by the quietness of it all. Elders blessed Ravi. Children called him Guru Potwala. And in every corner of the village, Arun's name lived on not in statues, but in practice. Part 10. The Monument of Clay. On the 10th anniversary of the flood, Ravi unveiled a monument in the village square. It wasn't made of stone or bronze but of clay, a massive, open pot, wide enough to stand inside. Its surface was etched with the fingerprints of over 300 villagers and visitors. Above it, a plaque read, "Shaped by many hands, hardened by fire, emptied for use. This pot is patience." At night, lamps were lit inside it so that the pot glowed from within. It became a symbol for what patience could create: a village reborn, a soul transformed, and a legacy that no storm could wash away. The moral: the quiet strength of patience. Patience is not the absence of action, but the wisdom to act with care and intention. It teaches us that slow growth is not weak growth, that resilience often looks like stillness, and strength is sometimes a soft-spoken guide, not a thunderous force. Through Arun's clay and Ravi's journey, we learn that time is not our enemy, but our teacher. That failure is not a flaw, but the foundation of mastery. That lives shaped with patience are vessels for peace.